If authorities have brought you into the federal criminal justice system and a judge has found you guilty or pronounced you guilty because you pleaded guilty to a criminal charge, or a jury convicted you beyond a reasonable doubt and the judge accepted the findings, or you pleaded guilty, that's a conviction. And at that point, things change from your being a defendant to being a convicted felon. And it's super important to understand, well, what are the steps that are going to follow after that felony conviction? What's going to follow next in the federal system is a federal probation officer is going to conduct what's called a pre-sentence investigation. And it's going to result in a report called the Presentence Investigation Report, sometimes referred to as PSI, sometimes referred to as PSR. Regardless of which initials they use, you need to know that it is a very comprehensive report that will have an influential role not only at sentencing, but also in the journey through the Bureau of Prisons, and also in the pathway towards relief, administrative relief, later down the road, whether it is transitioning from the Bureau of Prisons to a program that could result in a lower sentence, or transitioning to society in a home confinement program, or a furlough, or potentially as you advocate for higher levels of liberty when you're in a halfway house or home confinement, or even arguing later for early termination of supervised release. The more you understand the pre-sentence investigation report and its influence in the life of anybody who has been convicted of a crime in federal court, the better you can prepare. I would always argue that it's never too early and it's never too late to start preparing. But the more you know, the more you could start sowing seeds in that report so that it could serve as a very effective mitigation strategy for you at different stages in the journey. So you should know that it's going to be a U.S. probation officer who's going to conduct the investigation. And before that probation officer ever reaches out to you, they will already have a substantial amount of information that they would have received from the prosecutor and the investigators in the case, maybe even the victims in the case if there are victims. They're going to gather all that information, and they're eventually going to want to speak to you and get your version of events. So they're going to want to know about your personal background, your offense conduct, at least as you see it. They're going to provide some objective information, such as the criminal history. Then they're going to use their experience to go through the sentencing guidelines, look at all the enhancements, and come up with a guideline calculation that the judge will consider. Then they may even offer a recommendation for sentencing. They're going to provide financial information, and they are going to offer some suggestions for supervision, perhaps even before the sentencing date, but again, also perhaps on the other side of the journey. So it's super important that you understand this report and you understand your role in making sure that it is accurate, because the judge is going to rely heavily on this report when he's assessing the sentence. And we'll talk about how that process works out at the sentencing hearing in a later video. I just want you to recognize the importance of this report and making sure that it includes accurate information, and making sure that you're doing everything within your power to correct anything that is inaccurate information, because it can definitely increase the guideline range and add a significant amount of time to your sentence, potentially even years. Not only time to your sentence, but it could also influence your journey in the Bureau of Prisons, on what programs you could participate in, on whether you qualify for earlier release. It could influence your financial situation while you're in prison if you receive a fine or restitution order. So you really want to make sure that you're well educated on the pre-sentence investigation report, and you need to understand your role, because the probation officer is going to ask to meet with you either in person or over a video call, and it would make sense for your defense attorney to be there with you, and hopefully for your defense attorney to counsel you and advise you long before you have that pre-sentence investigation report. Some defense attorneys kind of abrogate their responsibility and duty to help you understand, and they just say, oh, it's just a perfunctory report. I would argue that it is not a perfunctory report. It has enormous implications on your future. So make sure that you're well prepared, and we provide all of the information for free on Prison Professors. That you just have to look through our site, use our artificial intelligence bot, and ask questions. Look through the articles. Watch videos like this one where I'm telling you, hey, make sure that you do these things before you have your pre-sentence investigation interview. Make sure that you build a very strong story that documents your background, what you've learned from this experience, what you identify with the offense, and what you're doing to make things better and to atone or reconcile with society. Give your version of events and see if you can influence your probation officer to include your story into the PSR report, because it will have such big implications later if you go into the Bureau of Prisons. So the practical tips are to make sure that you prepare, right? We have a lot of free information on Prison Professors. Be truthful. Don't ever lie to a probation officer, and don't omit facts, because it's potential that the probation officer could look at your omission, look at you as lying by omission, and they could potentially bring an accusation that you've obstructed justice, which could result in an enhancement to your sentencing guidelines. You want to really be thoughtful and strategic in your rehabilitation efforts and what you're doing. And remember, I am not as much concerned about what you did before you were charged with what have you done since you've learned you've been charged. Make sure that you architect a very good plan that will advance you as a candidate for mercy. So you want to make sure that your family and friends are prepared for this report, because your probation officer may want to talk with them as well. You want to work, again, really closely with your attorney. If your attorney is not giving you the guidance that you need, please make sure that you're spending a lot of time on our website. I always make 3 promises. I'm never going to lie to you. I'm never going to ask you to do anything I didn't do, and I'm never going to charge you a penny for anything that's on prisonprofessors.org. Everything is free. You don't need to hire a prison consultant. As you've heard from other videos, I don't have a lot of respect for prison consultants, only because the vast majority of them served a year in a camp and they fancy themselves an expert when they're not an expert. You are an expert. You are an expert in your life, and you have to know what steps you can take. If you've spent a lot of time educating yourself on our website, you've gone through all of the blogs and the lessons, you've seen the way that I advise you to prepare, you saw what I did, and you still want to talk to somebody, I only recommend my friend Justin Paperny, who's the founder of White Collar Advice, and you can visit him at whitecollaradvice.com/nonprofit, where he offers a free interactive webinar where you could ask questions and he will respond. But at the end of the day, this pre-sentence investigation report is much more important to you, perhaps, than to your attorney. And that's why you've got to invest the time and the energy to make sure that you're preparing well for this experience, so that you could influence that report, which will have a huge bearing on your journey through prison. Maybe not on your sentencing hearing, but probably so. We'll talk a little bit more about the sentencing hearing in a future video. I just want you to spend time educating yourself. I believe that you are the most important person to influence a positive outcome, and I would encourage you to get started today. My name is Michael Santos. I'm the founder of Prison Professors. I hope that you will also subscribe so that you get our newsletters at prisonprofessors.org, and follow us on social, because I will be sharing with you the work that I do in advocacy to try and bring more people home. Be cool.